Did you know that? In 2022, the United Nations Office on Drug and Crime in Nigeria said about 14.3 million people aged between 15 and 64 years abused drugs. As we observe the International Day Against Drug Abuse and Illicit Trafficking today, June 26th, it is imperative to shed light on the growing crisis that plagues the streets of Nigeria: drug abuse. The theme for the International Day Against Drug Abuse this year is People First: Stop Stigma and Discrimination, Strengthen Prevention. The alarming rise in drug related crimes and youth violence is a grave concern that demands immediate attention. So we took to the street to talk about this menace. Drug abuse is a menace in the society. In 2022, a report showed that about 14.3 million people in Nigeria from ages 15 to 64 abuse drugs. We are on the streets of Uyo to find out what is drug abuse, what are the causes of drug abuse, and how do we prevent drug abuse. This is to commemorate the World Drug Abuse Day. Join us. Akwa Ibom State, like many other regions across the globe, faces the detrimental consequences of drug abuse. Substance addiction, particularly among the youth, has reached alarming levels, eroding the fabric of society and posing significant challenges to public health and safety. To solve a problem, we must know what it is. We spoke to experts who answered the question, what is drug abuse?
Drug abuse is the illegal use of over the counter drug for sometimes not the desired effects.
Drug abuse is any substance when taken into the body, it affects the mood, the physiology, the psychology of the person, and it leads to a lot of anomalies from violence to murder to kidnapping and even to death.
When we talk of drugs, drugs are substances or molecules which are intended to heal ailments. When people take drugs, the reason why they are taking drugs is to arrest a disease condition. And so medically, drugs are designed for people that have health issues to take it, recover, and get better in a layman term. Then when we talk about drug abuse could simply be seen as the use of these drug substances other than purposes which they were designed for. For instance, if a drug product is, let's take for instance tramadol, which is one of the drug substances that is commonly abused, it is actually an analgesic, which is designed to take care of pains. When you have pains, you could take tramadol. But people that take tramadol do not take it because they are having any pains. And when you look at the dosing or the quantity to be taken for pains, for instance, it's usually between 50 to 100 milligrams. But people that abuse it take as much as 300 milligrams, which is like 6 times the normal. And then what you have to understand about drugs is that all drugs are potential poisons. When you don't take it at the right frequency and at the right proportion, it means we are abusing it.
Drugs are classified into 7 categories, some of which includes depressant, stimulants, anesthetics, amongst others. It is worthy to note that the availability and accessibility of various illicit drugs contribute to the growing crisis, trapping countless individuals in a vicious cycle of dependency and criminal behavior. What are the classes of drugs and which ones are commonly abused in Nigeria?
The most common ways that drug abuse are through pills because that one is easily taken with water. You just get to the pharmacy, you get it and take it. Then the other way that people abuse drug is through inhalation. That's like through smoke. People that smoke. Those are the two common ones. Then the rest can be through intravenous. Those are the like secondary ways people abuse drugs.
In Akwa Ibom State, the most common drugs of abuse are cannabis, tramadol, diazepam, rofinol, cocaine, heroin, amphetamine, also known as ice, Now, the latest in town is called Kulus. I'm sure you've heard of that. It's a balloon that contains nitric oxide.
Remember, the International Day Against Drug Abuse and Illicit Trafficking is marked on June 26th every year to strengthen action and cooperation in achieving a world free of drug abuse. What are the causes of drug abuse?
Drug abuse is ravaging us seriously, and we need to come together to fight it. I think part of the problem is the failure of the family and the failure of governance. Those two things are the problems that we have. You see, the young people are frustrated, very, very frustrated. And some of them think it is drug that they can use to soothe their frustration. And it's unfortunate. So there is need for many to know that there's a way out. You just need to sit up and re-strategize, you succeed. Those that are relying on drugs, they are not doing themselves good. And sometimes also it's also peer pressure. Others will force them to enter drugs. We have seen that it is not good, and there is need to up the awareness for people to stop it.
They take drugs because of their peer groups, the groups they follow, the gangs in school, and what they do. That's the reason why they take drugs.
I believe the cause of drug abuse, number one, is bad company. Bad company, and it depends on who you are and the kind of friends that you keep. Number two, a lot of mad people you see sometimes it's because of drugs that they take, and sometimes their brain does not carry what they take. So what I think the government should do about it, like I've heard that they're raiding some areas where they do hide and take those things. So I believe if government continue with that, I think the society will return to normal.
The main causes of drug abuse are one, for instance, peer pressure. Let's assume you have a group of friends that are doing a particular thing. For you to be accepted within their midst, you have to be doing what they are doing to feel belong. So if you have a particular, and when you look at drug abuse, it affects mostly the youth because of youth delinquency and all of that. And so for them to feel in maybe a particular circle that smoke cannabis, that is marijuana. Now, for a group that smokes cannabis to accept anybody in their circle, that person must also be willing to be smoking cannabis with them. So some people, because they want to belong to some class of individual, they tend to do what that group is doing. For instance, if it is drug abuse, they tend to indulge in it. And so those are the commonest causes. Then when you look at even societal factor, poverty, unemployment, some people out of depression of not even having what to do may resort to, for people to join some of those funny groups, it simply means that they are somehow jobless or they are not effectively engaged. Drug abuse could come like people that like attending night parties and all of that. Most of those things they give in some night parties and even in nightclubs are usually impregnated with some substances, like you can see people cooking rice and they cook it with maybe cannabis and all of that.
According to the United Nations Office of Drug and Crime, around 275 million people used drugs worldwide in the last year, while over 36 million people suffered from drug use disorders. In Nigeria, at that time, there were around 14.3 million drug users, of which close to 3 million suffered from drug use disorder. Numbers to say never lie. The state commander NDLEA Akwa Ibom Command CN Obotbasi tells us the statistics of drug victims in Akwa Ibom State.
And in the last 11 months, our statistics reveals that we have arrested 239 suspects, comprising of 197 males, 42 females, and the total drugs seized are 1,465.99 kg, convicted and jailed 59, cancelled 160, treated and rehabilitated 15 clients.
Drug abuse is like an epidemic, and there are signs a drug victim and drug addict will show. What are these signs?
There's another drug called flunitrazepam. That one, they lick it. I've seen people in the society, they are talking and you look at their tongue, it looks bluish or greenish. You know this person is on flunitrazepam. If you have an opportunity, you could counsel him. That thing you are taking, I'm like, whoa, it will destroy you. And so the pharmacies are, in fact, one of the major stakeholders. We are drug custodian. We do not give out drugs indiscriminately, and then we do not in any way encourage drug abuse because we know the effect that it poses to the society.
There's a relationship between drug abuse and the surge in crime, and it is commensurate to the detrimental impact of drug abuse in society. What are the effects of drug abuse?
One, they cannot be well coordinated. People that abuse drugs, they can't be well coordinated. If you look at them, the way they talk, they won't be rational in taking decisions. They're always very erratic, very irrational. Sometimes you could see them having tremor. There are some people after taking, drug abuse, some could become violent. In fact, it's an extreme way. Either they're extremely violent or they're extremely quiet. You see them sitting like a pussycat at the corner and just looking at things as if they've done nothing. Then you see some being very aggressive. In fact, you cannot even separate drug abuse and crimes. And when you abuse drug, generally you're damaging your organ system because anything that gets into the body must be metabolized through either the kidney or the liver, particularly the liver. So most people that abuse drugs, they may end up getting down with liver damage or kidney damage, generally organ damage, cardiac issues. For instance, makers of tobacco, cigarettes, will always write somewhere that they warn that this is dangerous to their health because all of those smoke things affect the heart. It could give you cardiovascular issue. So the end product of drug abuse is usually death at the end of the day. The tobacco manufacturer, they'll tell you smokers are liable to die young because most of the things in your body are gradually dying and fading off. You're having organ damage, liver, kidney, and all of that. So if you have two persons, the one that is indulging on drug abuse and the one that is not indulging, and you put two of them side by side, the one that is not indulging is likely to live longer because it will likely not have organ issues, cardiac issues, and the other issues that the other person is.
On the pregnant woman, she might have high blood pressure due to some of the drugs that she's taking. Some she might even have diabetes mellitus. Most of the drugs. Then you see some she'll have edema, she'll just be swelling all her body, her legs will be swelling, all parts of her body. That's for the mother, that's the feel for the mother. Then for the babies, most of them will be born, they will have congenital diseases like congenital heart effects. Most of them, they will be deformed. Most of these deformed babies, not like it's really something serious. Maybe it's because of the drugs the mom took while she was pregnant.
Generally, when you take drugs, first of all, it slows physical activity. It affects the brain, constriction of the pupils, flushing of the face and neck, constipation, restlessness. In some cases, violence. In other cases, it causes chills, unnecessary colds, excessive sweating, tremor, and even death.
In Nigeria, The National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, a federal law enforcement agency in Nigeria under the Federal Ministry of Justice, is charged with eliminating the growing, processing, manufacturing, selling, exporting, and trafficking of hard drugs. How has the NDLEA combated the crisis of drug abuse in society?
Don't forget, cannabis is planted in Nigeria, and Akwa Ibom is not an exception. We've arrested a lot of some farms, so to speak, farms here that people grow. Some grow it in their homes, some grow them in farms. Cannabis is cultivated here, and it is the largest drug of abuse in NDLA. There's something we do periodically called Operation Burn the Weeds. So we burn them, we get clearance from the courts, I get clearance from my boss, I get clearance from the state government, they allocate a place, get the judge to come as well, and then we openly burn it for everybody to see, and it's been tested before burning to assure the public that we are actually burning the weeds.
One of the goals of the International Day Against Drug Abuse is to combat stigma and discrimination by promoting language and attitudes that are respectful and non-judgmental towards drug victims. There is a stigma attached to drug victims. How do we stop the stigma?
My advice is that they should have empathy and respect to anybody who has a drug abuse situation. Drug abuse is a disease, just like tuberculosis is a disease. HIV is a disease, and they all live amongst us. Tuberculosis has a cure, so that is why they are taken to the appropriate place to get cleansed and free from these diseases. So everybody should have respect and empathy for them so that they can speak out, so that they can come out, and so that they can get help. Where they are discriminated against, they would not like to speak out, they would not like to come out, and the menace will continue in it. So the best thing for us to do is to come face reality as it is and enable them to get help.
It is in the open that drug abuse has become linked to rising crimes and youth violence in Akwa Ibom State. The influence of substances such as cocaine, heroin, and cannabis on the brain often leads to altered mental states, increased aggression, and impaired judgment. Furthermore, the demand for illicit substances has given rise to a network of drug cartels and gangs. A common quote says, if you have a problem, you look for a solution. What are the solutions to drug abuse in Nigeria?
In terms of preventing and curbing the menace of drug abuse, that all hands, I use the word all, have to be on deck. Parents have a very pivotal role to play in guiding their children, in watching the kind of friends they keep. Most of these parents that throw their children to private school, to school abroad, most of these people that, some of these youths that are deported from school abroad, why do they deport them? They're always involved in drug abuse over there, particularly in countries that do not tolerate them. Now, who do you blame? Is it the school authority or the parents? And so when parents should be able to watch out the attitude, the government agencies should be strengthened more in terms of number. By the time the government increase their game by employing more hands, then this menace will definitely stop. Even religious organizations and bodies, they need to preach it to the youth, because who are the people that are engaging in this drug abuse? It's mostly people from the ages of 15 to 35. That's the major ones, and those are the youth. They need to be spoken with. The traditional leaders, community leaders need to talk to their subject. All hands just have to be on deck for us to have a society that is free of drug abuse.
When we get victims of drug abuse, we encourage them to come for rehabilitation. And during the course of rehabilitation, they are detoxified of all the illicit drugs they've taken. They go through a lot of tests, they go through a lot of counseling. We try to give them skills acquisition. We try to tell them to get them to have refusal and coping skills on how to gradually stay away from. When some of them go back to the substance, we have to rehabilitate them again, flush it out, detoxify them of the drugs, and make sure they are gainfully employed, either through skills, because what causes this going back most of the time is that they're idle. When they go back home, they're idle, doing nothing. They should be properly engaged in one form of activity or the other to decrease idleness. And of course, they have to disassociate from their former colleagues to enable them live a fruitful life.
Today, officials gave their advice to citizens on the International Day Against Drug Abuse, and citizens charged government to do more.
We are calling on government at all levels to sit up. Government is not serious on this. You know, when government is serious, government is next to God. When government is serious, it will come down.
And I can assure you that if we can fight drug abuse to a standstill, then crimes could reduce by as much as 80%. Because you cannot have crime and not have drug abuse.
I want to tell the Akwa Ibom people that without people, the earth will be void, and we need people, and we have to live amongst ourselves. So let's stop the stigma, stop the discrimination, strengthen prevention, say no to drugs, though we are many, but in one voice, condemn the scourge.
As we mark the International Day Against Drug Abuse today, it is crucial for all stakeholders, including the government, law enforcement agencies, community leaders, families, and individuals, to come together and tackle this crisis head on. Prevention, people say, is better than cure. All hands must be on deck to ensure that drug abuse is eradicated in Nigeria. I am Blessing Dickson, reporting for Spectrum Television. Enjoy the rest of our programs.